Okay? Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay? Can everybody hear me okay? Great, thank you. So once again, my name is Jehan Chu. Thank you to EdCon for allowing me to present to you today. I am the managing partner of Kinetic Capital. We are based in Hong Kong. But more importantly, I'm one of the founders of the Bitcoin Association of Hong Kong back in January 2014. And it's my pride and joy to have been the founder of the Ethereum meetup in March of 2014. My first meetup was 5 people, and it was Stefan Tool Skyping in to teach us about Ethereum. So from then to now, it's been an incredible and very privileged journey. Kinetic itself, we are a blockchain platform. We focus on technology. We focus on advisory. We work with startups in order to help them on tokenization. We also have an asset management arm. We work with companies and we invest in early stage equity as well as tokens. And we also have a community arm where we work to try and support the community with various education and outreach. Now, today I want to kind of just talk really briefly about how I feel about blockchain. My entry into blockchain and Bitcoin was really around understanding the idea of proof of existence. So I was never really about the kind of currency side and the payment side or the gold side. I fell in love with this idea of proof of existence and the idea that you could lock information and history into this almost digital sedimentary layer. And that's kind of what got me into it. This is actually a concept that I first heard about from Jerry Brito from Coin Center, I believe. And it kind of got me thinking that, you know, even at that time, blockchain's not just about recording transaction history. It's really about recording history itself. It's this concept that we can capture memory. I love this idea of a virtual library of Alexandria that would help us to preserve memory, to preserve things that we experienced as a society, as a community. And that we could store all of this in a lossless and almost untamperable way. I love this idea that we can collect and access things together. Maybe we could preserve kind of history across time periods, across rogue administrations, across dynasties, forever. And history is important. It's 1/3 of who we are as people, where we came from, where we are, where we're going. This is what history is. And I started thinking about this idea that every person and every object is a physical record of history. We are the sum total of everything we have experienced. Every line on our face, every crack in every chip, and every object that we interact with. So, in a way, every person and everything is its own transaction history. In physical space, in material, in kinetic energy. But at the same time, it's we that give the meaning to these objects. An object is nothing without the meaning that we give to it, the way that we interact with it, the importance that we give to it, how we interact with it. In a way, objects and everything around us is an extension of our own identity. If we give meaning to everything, then we are everything that we are and everything that we interact with. In a way, it's our own layer too. But a lot of this information is disorganized. It's incomplete. We forget things. We lose things. We don't see everything. And that's kind of the reality of our physical existence and also our memory itself. So I've been really interested in NFTs recently. And I always kind of really like this idea of NFTs as non-fungible assets because I used to be an art dealer. I used to work with collectors. So I really think a lot about concepts and history and provenance and unique objects and scarcity and rarity, all the things that kind of make art a really interesting kind of object. And I started to think, you know, a little bit beyond where we are with NFTs now. And I thought that maybe NFTs can almost be thought of as a human layer of blockchain. A way to access blockchain and a way to access the tokens themselves and the objects through the layer of NFTs. I think NFTs can help us capture and organize and access this memory and extend that identity. They also allow others to access this memory. When you take an NFT and you marry it to a physical object, that object now has the ability to collect. It has the ability to capture its own experiences, its own data. In addition, it has the ability for others to add to it. It becomes additive. The object itself starts to become the sum total of everything that it has interacted with. And we can now represent this, not in a fungible way, but in a non-fungible way. And so the blockchain world starts to resemble a lot more what we experience as humans and what we interact with. And that's pretty exciting. Take this bowl, for example. This is a hypothetical. I was 6 years old, and I was playing in the backyard. And I was digging holes just to see what was around there. And I found this bowl. It was poking out of the ground. I unearthed it. It was the first really big thing that I'd found on my own. So I have that memory of discovery. I brought it home to my mom. We washed it off, spent the afternoon trying to clean it, get all the dirt out. We talked about it. Where did it come from? I'm from New Jersey. And in New Jersey, there's a lot of Native American artifacts that are always kind of coming out of the ground. Arrowheads and bowls and pottery and little things. And we thought maybe this is one of those. And we shared that memory. And I always kept that bowl. I didn't really keep it front of mind, but I kept it, sometimes in a box, sometimes on a shelf. And that bowl became a reference. It became a doorway to that memory and that connection with my mother, and that time period, and that feeling of discovery. But that's imperfect. I forget. She forgets. It's out of sight. It's out of mind. And if we have a way to kind of start to capture this, perhaps in an NFT, perhaps we start to kind of extend our ability to experience these things. I think in a way this bowl is a doorway into our shared history, and every object has that potential. I think NFTs are the digital representation of these objects. If we can uniquely identify objects, then we have a common interface in which to interact with them in a data way, in the same way that physically we have a common interface, which is space and sensation and physicality. And we can do it over time, and that starts to become really interesting. Now, we all kind of know what NFTs are, at least this first generation of NFTs. We have Ethereum and CryptoKitties and Decentraland, and they're doing great things. But these are virtual things. This is just the beginning. We're just starting to scratch the surface of what's really possible. And I think the purpose of this talk is really just to kind of push us a little bit more into a realm where we're starting to think about scarcity and starting to kind of expand how we think about the entire space of assets. What exactly is an NFT in the real world? In addition to being a digital representation, when we can basically marry a digital token to a physical object, it gives us the ability to create uniqueness and scarcity. It gives us the ability to physically locate things via the blockchain. We can now place things. It's a way to accumulate information and data in a way which is centered around the object itself. And what that does is it allows us to keep context. And that's a really important thing. The object carries its context, not only its experiential context, but its historical context with it. Wherever that object moves, the context moves with it. And it's accessible. We can all see it. And also, it's universally accessible and interoperable. You can see the same thing about that object, the same history that I can see. But what use are they? Why do we need these things in the real world? Well, again, I think we're really just starting to begin to think about what's possible with them. But I think in a nutshell, if we're able to represent unique objects, we can add information to them, and we can also take value from them. The object in its digital form starts to extend beyond the object itself. We can now create value, and we can trade value, and we can extract value, and we can add value. The object becomes the anchor of that information, and NFTs become the access point. it starts to allow us to kind of codify our experiences, relate into an object, and store that. They always say that history is written by the victor, but perhaps with object-oriented histories, that starts to change. One example that I would just kind of cite is Digix. Digix is a gold-backed token, one of the first gold-backed tokens. Their mainnet went live just a couple of weeks ago. And what they do is they take physical gold and they store it in a fully auditable vault in Singapore. And they issue tokens. So every token, these are actually ERC20, so fungible tokens, not non-fungibles. But they also have these bars, which could potentially be an ERC 721. And what they've done is basically allowed people to take the value of a lump of gold sitting static in a vault, and they've been able to unleash the velocity of that value into the entire economy. Now, gold is no longer just sitting in that vault. Now the value is racing all over the world. It can be used as collateral. It can be loaned. It can be used as payment. You can do so much with the value of that. And through that custody aspect, you start to allow that, that value to be released. And this is important because now, while we don't all want a lump of gold, there are physical objects all around us. The entire universe of value is actually locked up in the physical objects that surround us. Now, not all of them are useful, not all of them are valuable. That's up to the market to decide, the market of experiences and the market of finance and economies. But there is so much locked up, wasted value sitting everywhere, in every single object that surrounds us. Another example is this painting. It's a really famous artist who I love named Grotjahn. And an example is Codex, which is a really interesting project that marries NFTs with artwork titles. So it's a way to uniquely identify artwork titles and allow everyone from gallerists, curators, collectors, students, auction houses, dealers, to all find that object and add value to it. Perhaps it's research, perhaps it's price history, perhaps it's condition, perhaps it's physical location, perhaps it's an insurance quote. You start to have all this ability to extend that value. And then finally, we go back to the personal. And I think this is really where this all boils down to, and where we talk about NFTs perhaps as a human layer for tokenization. This mug starts to become a collection of its experiences and your experiences. The moment that you receive this mug as a gift, the person who gave it to you, the people you were with when it happened, all of these things can start to be accumulated and follow the object and related to you as a person. The special way that you always take your coffee every single morning, that starts to become that experience. It's part of you just as much as anything else, just as much as your hand. The reminder that people have of you when they see this mug, people start to create associations. And all of these ideas and experiences have value. Maybe it's not a financial value, but we know that when we're all kind of turned to dust, that the ability to capture and access these experiences and these memories and these associations are priceless. They're invaluable. I think that every object can unlock a vault of value. We just need a framework, and we need a methodology to start to capture it. And I think NFTs perhaps offer one way to do it. Remember why you started is the theme of this EdCon. And I think objects around us start to help us to open the doorway to those memories. There are still problems, things that need to be solved. How do we consistently marry the online object to the offline? Is there a physical protocol that we can imagine? Digix has solved it by having a contractually backed commercial contract, but there must be other ways. How do we reset and recover? How do we locate the object, perhaps in space, perhaps the foam project, which is an amazing geospatial index. There are other things we need: marketplaces, search engines, visualizations, contexts. This is a really important one. Objects need a home. Objects need a place and a context to understand them. we need online to offline connectors. And I was talking just yesterday to Matt Lockyer, who's proposing ERC 998, which is about composables and being able to aggregate non-fungibles and fungibles. Very, really interesting. I'm just starting to learn about it. You're welcome. Gateways to tag objects, because everything needs to kind of come together. And then perhaps oracles to validate this information over time. So that's kind of where I've gotten to. Just a sharing of some thoughts and hopefully a way to open up the conversation about NFTs and another way of thinking about NFTs. A little shameless plug, Ari from Decentraland and myself from Kinetic are going to be hosting a conference on NFTs, gaming, and collectibles in Hong Kong, end of July, and we hope that you all can join us. We're looking for speakers, we're looking for sponsors, we're looking for attendees. It's a 2-day hackathon and a 2-day conference, and we really hope to just open up the conversation and get everybody participating. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jehan. That was great. For me personally, it made a lot of impact just to think about a digital museum that I can spend some more time in with my own memories.